1. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Hedy Lamarr, an actress and inventor, along with George Antheil, developed frequency-hopping spread-spectrum technology, which became the foundation for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Starting from the idea of how to make the signal for a radio-guided torpedo which Germans cannot jam, she and her friend George Antheil invented a method where radio frequency is constantly changing. This method Hedy named frequency hopping. In 1942, the U.S. Navy rejected the invention due to doubts about the reliability of such a device made according to the technology of that time. But in the early 1960s, the technology was deployed on U.S. warships to prevent Soviet signal jamming during the Cuban Missile Crisis. When car phones first became popular in the 1970s, carriers used frequency hopping to enable hundreds of callers to share a limited spectrum of radio frequencies. The same technology was rolled out for the earliest cell phone networks. By the 1990s, frequency hopping was so ubiquitous that it became the technology standard required by the U.S. Federal Communications Commission, FCC, for secure radio communications. But few people knew who was the inventor of it. George Antheil, unfortunately, died in 1959. Hedy didn't want money, but she did want recognition, says her biographer, and it really angered her that nobody gave her credit for this important invention. In 1997, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF, was the first to publicly acknowledge Lamarr for her invention by presenting her with the EFF Pioneer Award. And Hedy being Hedy, what did she say? Well, it's about time. She died in 2000, and only in 2014 she was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. 2. Josephine Cochrane invented the first successful hand-powered dishwasher. She designed and constructed it with the assistance of mechanic George Butters. Cochrane received a patent in December 1886 for her invention and founded the Garris Cochrane Manufacturing Company to manufacture her dishwashing machines. The company focused on hotels and other commercial customers and was renamed Cochrane's Crescent Washing Machine Company in 1897. The first dishwashers were too expensive for an average household, costing between $75 and $100, which most women would not spend on an item for their kitchen even if it meant easing the effort they had to put in washing dishes. In addition, most homes in that era were not equipped to handle the machine's requirements in using hot water. However, years later, homes began adding boilers that were big enough to meet those requirements, eventually allowing Cochrane to sell to housewives, which initially was her end goal. 3. Kevlar. Starting in the 1940s, DuPont was trying to find a petroleum-based polymer fiber that would be lighter and harder-wearing than steel in radial tires. And at the same time, the protracted Second World War emphasized the need for lightweight, wearable armor to protect personnel and equipment. A child of Polish immigrants, Stephanie Kwolek, during her 40-year career in DuPont, filed 28 patents. In 1971, she invented Kevlar, a strong, heat-resistant synthetic fiber. In addition to Kevlar, she contributed to products such as spandex, lycra, Nomex, and Captain. 4. Elizabeth J. Maggie Phillips, an American writer, game designer, feminist. In 1903, created a game, Landlords, that later became known as Monopoly. The Landlords game was designed to demonstrate the economic ill effects of land monopolism and the use of land value tax as a remedy for it. Originally, the goal of the game was to simply obtain wealth. In the following patents, the game developed to eventually have two different settings, one being the monopolist setup, known as Monopoly, where the goal was to own industries, create monopolies, and win by forcing others out of their industries, and the other being the anti-monopolist setup, known as Prosperity, where the goal was to create products and interact with opponents. Maggie also developed other games, including Bargain Day, in which shoppers compete with each other in a department store, and King's Men, an abstract strategy game. In 1933, Parker Brothers published a modified version of Landlords, known as Monopoly, and claimed that this was their invention. 5. Lillian Mahler Gilbreth was an American scientist, author, psychologist, industrial engineer, management consultant, ergonomics expert, and personnel issues specialist. One of the first female engineers to receive a PhD, Lillian Gilbreth and her husband Frank Gilbreth were efficiency experts and founders of movement science, developers of separate methods of scientific work organization. Lillian is also credited with the invention of the foot pedal trash can, adding shelves to the inside of refrigerator doors, including the butter tray and egg keeper. Gilbreth filed numerous patents for her designs. When she was an industrial engineer working at General Electric, she interviewed over 4,000 women to design the proper height for stoves, sinks, and other kitchen fixtures as she worked on improving kitchen designs. After the death of Frank Gilbreth, Lillian continued to work alone. She completely revised the arrangement of the kitchen and developed a new, innovative project. She invented the working triangle, which included the location of the refrigerator, sink, and stove next to each other. She divided the kitchen space into upper and lower parts. In the lower part, there were cabinets for kitchen utensils, and in the upper part, for storing products. Also, Lillian Gilbreth invented an electric mixer for whipping and perfected a canning knife. 6. Windshield wipers for cars were invented in 1903 by Mary Anderson, an American rancher, viticulturist, and inventor. In November 1903, she received her first patent on the windshield wiper. Year before, she visited New York City in the winter. Anderson sat in a trolley car on a frosty day. She observed that the trolley car driver struggled to see past the windows because of the falling snow. The trolley car's front window was designed for bad weather visibility, but its multi-pane windshield system worked very poorly. Therefore, to clear the sights, the driver needed to open the window, lean out of the vehicle, or stop the car to go outside in order to wipe the windscreen with his hands. Anderson, who was not an engineer but an entrepreneur, identified the problem and its opportunity. She envisioned a windshield wiper blade that the trolley driver could operate from the inside. At that time, it rarely occurred to anyone else to eliminate the problem. It was something drivers simply accepted and dealt with. After the return, she drew up a sketch for a wiper blade that could be operated from inside a vehicle and wrote up the description. Her device consisted of a lever inside the vehicle that controlled a rubber blade on the outside of the windshield. The lever could be operated to cause the spring-loaded arm to move back and forth across the windshield. A counterweight was used to ensure contact between the wiper and the window. The device could be easily removed if desired after the winter was over. Similar devices had been made earlier, but Anderson's was the first windshield clearing device to be effective. Anderson's simple mechanism and basic design have remained much the same. In 1903, when Anderson applied for the patent, cars were not very popular. Henry Ford's Model A, aka the first regular car, had not been manufactured yet. Anderson tried to sell the rights for her invention through many companies, but always got rejections. By the 1910s, the automobile manufacturing business had grown exponentially, and windshield wipers were standard equipment. Giving up on partnering with companies to manufacture her invention, the patent expired in 1920. According to the National Inventors Hall of Fame, her invention was simply ahead of its time, and other companies and entrepreneurs were able to profit off her original ideas. 7. Circular saw. Invented in 1813 by Sarah Tabitha Babbitt, American inventor, member of the Shakers sect in Massachusetts. Watching the work of two workers on a sawmill, she realized that half of the sawyer's movements are wasted. Longitudinal sawing of logs was a very difficult and time-consuming job. The log was sawn lengthwise with the help of a special 6-foot saw with long handles. 2 people participated in the work. One was on a platform on top of the log, and the second was below, in a pit under the platform. The upper sawyer had to have great physical strength, and a lot of sawdust fell on the lower sawyer all the time. The constancy of the thickness of the loosening board was monitored by the upper sawyer, which directed the saw along a predetermined line. Thus, the production of boards and bars through manual sawing was very expensive. At the same time, it was impossible to achieve mass production of lumber. Sarah Babbitt realized that breaking logs would be much more effective when using a circular saw with a round blade. The first circular saw made by her began to be used on a sawmill in Albany, New York in 1813. The circular saw was rotated with the help of a water wheel. Sarah Babbitt did not patent the circular saw she invented, so that other people could use it without hindrance. But 3 years later, 2 Frenchmen discovered a description of a circular saw in one of the newspapers and patented it. It is also claimed that Sarah Babbitt invented dentures, artificial teeth. However, as a religious woman and a member of the Shaker sect, Sarah Babbitt never patented any of her inventions. 8. The closed-circuit television, CCTV, the first home security system, invented by Marie Van Britten Brown, along with her husband Albert Brown in 1966. The patent was granted 3 years later in 1969. It was the first of its kind, where her husband's name was below wife's. Both Marie and her husband Albert had irregular work hours that often did not overlap. Marie was a nurse, while her husband Albert was an electrician. Because of this, there would be many nights where Marie was left alone in her home at night. The crime rate in her neighborhood was very high, and the police typically took a lot of time to arrive in her neighborhood. This led Brown to invent the first home security system. Their invention consisted of 4 peepholes, a sliding camera, TV monitors, and microphones. The camera could go from peephole to peephole. The camera was connected to the TV monitors inside her home. The TV monitors allowed for her to see who was at the door without opening it, while the microphone allowed her to speak with whoever was outside without having to open the door. 9. Before graphical interfaces, the interaction with the computer was made by line where you should type the commands to operate your files and programs. The concept of graphical user interface, GUI, which laid the groundwork for modern computer interfaces, was developed during the 1970s by the team at Xerox PARC, including Dr. Adele Goldberg, an American computer scientist. Also, she was one of the co-developers of the programming language Smalltalk 80, which is a computer software that simplifies the programming language and has been the basis of knowledge and structure for many other programming languages such as Python, C, and Java. 10. The first waterproof, disposable diaper invented by Marion O'Brien Donovan, American inventor and entrepreneur in 1950. Recognized as one of the era's most prominent female inventors, she secured a total of 20 patents for her creations. In 1946, Donovan, a mother, felt that cloth diapers served more as a wick than a sponge, while rubber pants caused painful diaper rashes. Consequently, she acted on making a better solution. Donovan ripped her shower curtain off of the hanger, cut it into pieces, and sewed it into a waterproof diaper cover with snaps instead of safety pins. This led to a diaper cover with an insert for an absorbent diaper panel and a breathable parachute cloth. Donovan called this the boater because it looked like a boat. However, no big-name manufacturers were interested, so she started manufacturing herself. In 1949, the boater was a great success at Saks Fifth Avenue. A couple years later, she sold her company and her patents to Kiko Corporation for $1 million. While Donovan was never able to find the right manufacturer, she is credited with innovations that eventually led to the creation of disposable diapers, which were introduced in the U.S. by Procter & Gamble in 1961. 11. CRISPR-Cas9, a groundbreaking tool for gene editing that has vast potential in medicine and genetics, was invented by Dr. Jennifer Doudna, American biochemist. Doudna was one of the first women to share a Nobel in the sciences. She received the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry with co-inventor Emmanuel Charpentier for the development of a method for genome editing. 12. The first computer programming language compiler, Developed in 1952 by Grace Hopper, an American computer scientist, mathematician, and United States Navy Rear Admiral. She was a pioneer of computer programming and the first to devise the theory of machine-independent programming languages, and used this theory to develop the Flow-Matic programming language and COBOL, an early high-level programming language still in use today. She believed that programming should be simplified with an English-based computer programming language. Her compiler converted English terms into machine code understood by computers.